Welcome back! Today we're taking you on another walk through Royal Krakow. This time we're heading straight toward the main market square, a place that's been the beating heart of the city and the stage for its biggest events for centuries. Here we'll find world-famous landmarks, charming side streets, and stories and legends hidden in the walls of the townhouses. From the majestic St. Mary's Basilica to the lively Cloth Hall, and even some lesser-known corners. We'll uncover the market square in all its glory. Get ready for tales of kings, merchants, artists, and townspeople who shaped this extraordinary part of Krakow. And don't forget, you'll find the route map, practical tips and useful links on our website, with the link also in the video description below. And if you'd like to join us on more of these walks, hit the subscribe button so you'll never lose the track of us. Today's walk is our second route, strolling through Krakow, around the main market square. Ready? Let's go! Now, even though today's route may look short on the map, in reality it's packed with squares, streets and alleys lined with townhouses, churches, towers and monuments. Each one carries its own stories, legends and history. That's why we recommend setting aside at least a full day for this walk. And once you see it for yourself, you'll understand why. We begin our walk right in the heart of Krakow. The main market square was laid out in 1257, when Duke Bolesław the Chaste granted Krakow its city charter. That was a turning point. The new charter organized the city, and the square became its commercial hub, a meeting place for merchants and the center of everyday life. What makes Krakow's market square stand out is its scale and proportions. It covers almost 10 acres, roughly 650 by 650 feet, making it the largest medieval square in all of Europe. Its layout was planned with remarkable precision. From each corner, 3 streets radiate outward, forming a perfectly regular chessboard-like grid for the medieval city. This geometric plan was no accident. It was meant to highlight Krakow's importance and make trade and communication easier. And from the moment it was created until today, the market square has remained the unchanged heart of Krakow. For centuries, it's been the center of the city's economic, political and social life, and the site of events that shaped not only Krakow, but all of Poland. Right in the center of Krakow's main market square, you'll spot the Cloth Hall, one of the city's most iconic landmarks, and a symbol of its merchant power. The story goes way back to the 14th century. The first trading halls were built under Duke Bolesław the Chaste. And a little later, King Casimir the Great had brick-roofed stalls put up. They lasted until 1555, when a huge fire burned them down. The Cloth Hall we see today is thanks to a Renaissance rebuild in the 16th century. That's when the famous attic was added, decorated with mascarons. These quirky stone faces of animals, people, even dragons. Their job? Scare off evil spirits and thieves, and at the same time make townspeople laugh with their funny, exaggerated features. It's humor carved in stone, and a reminder of Krakow's wealth and artistry during its golden age. Don't miss the column capitals under their arcades either. They were added in the 19th century by architect Tomasz Pryliński, with input from painter Jan Matejko, who made sure the decorations tied into Polish history. Step inside and you'll find rows of wooden stalls, decorated with gilt crests and coats of arms from Polish cities. Back in the day, these stalls were bursting with cloth, spices, and perfumes brought from faraway lands. That's actually where the name cloth hall, in Polish Sukiennice, comes from. Today it's the perfect place to pick up Krakow souvenirs and some gorgeous local handicrafts. Of course, the cloth hall has its legends too. The most famous? Look up at the ceiling and you'll see a knife hanging on a chain. The story goes that one of the brothers building St. Mary's Basilica killed the other with it, jealous because his brother's tower turned out taller. That's how locals once explained the uneven height of the Basilica's two towers. The real story is probably less dramatic. The knife likely symbolized Magdeburg law and was used to punish criminals. For example, thieves might literally lose an ear here. Upstairs you find a gallery of the 19th century Polish art, part of the National Museum. This place is a treasure chest. You'll see Jan Matejko's monumental works like The Prussian Homage and Kościuszko et Racławice. The glowing canvases of Henryk Siemiradzki, the powerful scenes of Józef Chełmoński, refined portraits by Piotr Michałowski, and the haunting subtle works of Olga Boznańska, one of Poland's greatest painters at the turn of the 20th century. And when you're ready for a break, check out Café Noworolski, right on the side facing the Mickiewicz Monument. It was opened in 1912 by Jan Noworolski, inspired by Vienna's cafes, though the building shows 1910, probably marking the start of his business here. This spot quickly became the cafe in Krakow, a favorite of artists and writers like Wyspiański and Bojżeleński. In the years between the World Wars, it was even nicknamed the Salon of Krakow. And the best part? It is still here today, carrying on that tradition with plenty of old world atmosphere. Beneath the main market square lies one of the most modern museums in Poland. The Rynek Underground opened in 2010 after years of archaeological work. It's a truly unique place where you can literally step back in time and see medieval Krakow just as it looked centuries ago. The Rynek Underground is also a brilliantly designed story about trade and Krakow's global connections. Interactive maps show where exotic goods once came from, spices arriving from the Middle East, silk brought in from Italy, and amber traveling down from the Baltic coast. The tour ends right near the Sukiennice, the perfect spot to pick up our walk and continue exploring the Rynek Główny. We now leave the Sukiennice and head toward the former city hall. Today, only a solitary tower, about 230 feet tall, remains from its once massive structure. For centuries, it was one of the most important symbols of Krakow's main square. The town hall was built back in the 14th century, and for centuries served as the very heart of the city's administration. This was where the council met, where decisions about everyday life were made, and where the city prison was located, in the underground chambers. In the 19th century, after the main body of the town hall was demolished, the tower remained standing alone, both a witness to that era and a silent guardian of the square. The entrance is guarded by a pair of lions, brought here from the classical Morstin Palace in Pławowice. At the doorway, you can also see a late Gothic portal from the mid-15th century, decorated with the coat of arms of Krakow and the emblem of Poland. The tower is open to visitors, who can climb the narrow, uneven stairs to the very top, where a beautiful panorama of Krakow unfolds. In the halls on the different floors, exhibitions tell the story of the city's past, while today the underground houses a small theater stage. Instruments of torture, once used in the old prison, were saved by the painter Jan Matejko. Today you can view them in his house on Floriańska Street, which now serves as a museum. At the foot of the tower stands something truly remarkable: the monumental sculpture Eros Bendato, Eros Bound by Igor Mitoraj. The massive top-lit head, with its empty eye sockets and face wrapped in bandages, leaves a powerful impression on both locals and visitors alike. Igor Mitoraj was one of the most distinguished Polish contemporary artists, a sculptor of worldwide renown. He studied in Krakow, but spent most of his life in France and Italy. His works adorn the squares and museums of the world's greatest cities, from Warsaw, Paris and Milan to London, Rome, Sicily and Tokyo. They are best experienced in public spaces, where monumental fragments of human bodies, often scarred or bound, create a striking dialogue with their surroundings and invite reflection on the condition of modern humanity. For some, Eros Bendato is a symbol of fragility and suffering. For others, it is a sign of our contemporary history, echoing themes from antiquity. What's certain is that the sculpture has become one of Krakow's most photographed landmarks. Children love peeking inside it, and for adults it has become both a convenient meeting point and a memorable marker on the square. Standing by the town hall tower, it's worth noticing one of the memorial plaques at its base. It marks the spot where in 1525 Duke Adalbert Hohenzollern, ruler of Prussia, swore an oath of loyalty to the King of Poland, Sigismund the Old. Many years later, this very moment was immortalized by Jan Matejko in his monumental painting, which we already had the chance to admire earlier in the Sukiennice. At the southeastern corner of the main market square, right next to the cloth hall, stands the tiny church of St. Adalbert, one of the oldest churches in Krakow. Its origins go back to the 11th century, which means it was built even before the market square was laid out in its present form. It's remarkable. This little Romanesque church witnessed the rise of the largest medieval square in Europe all around it. According to the chronicler Jan Długosz, it was here that Saint Adalbert himself preached. To commemorate that event, a small wooden chapel was first erected, later replaced around the turn of the 10th and 11th centuries by a stone church. Today, Romanesque remains of that early building can still be seen in the underground. Over the centuries, the church was rebuilt many times. A Baroque dome and a new facade were added, so now it combines Romanesque and Baroque features. A late Baroque portal from the 18th century leads inside, where visitors can admire a 15th century crucifix and an early 17th century painting of Saint Adalbert. Hidden in the crypt is a real surprise. Archaeologists uncovered traces of earlier structures and the remains of medieval market stalls that once surrounded the church, long before the cloth hall was built. You can still see layers of old cobblestones and almost sense the atmosphere of Krakow 1,000 years ago. Today, despite its size, the Church of St. Adalbert is a unique accent on the market square, a witness to its earliest history and a living link between the medieval town and the modern city. Opening the eastern side of the Rynek Główny, set against the backdrop of the Sukiennice, stands the famous monument to Adam Mickiewicz. Soon after the cloth hall was rebuilt, a competition was announced for his monument. Out of many entries, the design by Theodor Rygier was chosen, and in 1898, on the centenary of the poet's birth, the monument was unveiled. From the start it stirred emotions and sparked aesthetic disputes, but quickly became more than a decoration. It was a symbol of national pride during the years of partition. Mickiewicz, author of Pan Tadeusz and Forefathers' Eve, was for Poles much more than a poet. He was a spiritual guide and a symbol of the struggle for freedom. And today at his monument, where allegories of homeland, science, poetry and valor stand at his feet, Krakow's residents and visitors alike still arrange to meet, simply saying, "See you at Adaś." The monument's fate was turbulent. In 1940, the Germans demolished it and took it to the Reich. After the war, some of the sculptures were found on a scrapyard in Hamburg, and in 1955, thanks to the work of Stanisław Popławski, the famous Adaś returned to the square. Today it's hard to imagine Krakow without it. At once a symbol of literature and history, and the city's most popular meeting point. Just a few steps from the Adam Mickiewicz Monument stands the most important landmark of Krakow's main square, St. Mary's Basilica, the city's second most significant church after Wawel Cathedral. The basilica sits on a spacious square that until the late 18th century was a parish cemetery surrounded by a high wall. After the cemetery was removed, the space became an open square, officially named St. Mary's Square in 1858. The fact that the church stands at an angle to the square reveals its pre-foundation origins. It was built before today's street grid was laid out. Two uneven towers dominate the skyline and immediately catch the eye. The taller one, known as the hejnał, stands more than 260 feet tall. Its spire, dating from 1478, was crowned in 1666 with a gilded crown, founded by a townsman, Piotr Antoni Pestalozzi. Since the Middle Ages, this tower has been maintained by the city and used as a watchtower, hence the name hejnał. From here every hour, the famous hejnał call sounds, a melody that once signaled the opening and closing of the city gates, and also warned residents of fire or danger. From the tower of St. Mary's Basilica, the hejnał is played 4 times, to the 4 corners of the world. First toward Wawel Castle, symbolically for the king. Then to the west, to the city authorities. The next notes drift north toward the Barbican, greeting newcomers. And finally, the melody turns east, toward the small market square, once for the merchants, today for the firefighters. The first written record of the hejnał dates to 1392. Its ending, according to a 20th century legend, commemorates a watchman struck in the throat by a Tatar arrow while sounding the alarm. The shorter tower, about 226 feet high, has always served as the church belfry. The origins of the parish date back to the 13th century. But the church acquired its present Gothic form in the 14th and 15th centuries. On the western wall facing the square, you'll find a bronze plaque dedicated to King John III Sobieski. Unveiled in 1883, to mark the bicentenary of the Battle of Vienna. It was created by Pius Weloński, one of Poland's leading sculptors of the late 19th century. Entry into the basilica is through a late Baroque porch connecting the 2 towers, above which stands a lantern topped with a statue of Christ the Savior. This entrance is reserved for prayer only. In Inside you can pray before the chapel of Our Lady of Częstochowa, which houses a faithful copy of the miraculous icon from Jasna Góra. According to legend, the copy was made when the original was being transported from Krakow to Częstochowa, and it has been venerated in Krakow ever since. Another place of prayer is St. Antony's Chapel, also called the Chapel of the Wrongdoers, because condemned prisoners spend their last night there before execution. Sightseeing the church itself requires a ticket and entry through St. Mary's Square. Before stepping inside, look for the iron shackles hanging by the entrance. In past centuries, these were used for public penance. Adulteries were chained by the neck and left on display to shame them. Today, in an ironic twist, couples happily pose for photos here, believing it will bring good luck in love. Rise your eyes higher and you'll spot a sundial on the church's southern wall. The current one was made in 1954 by Tadeusz Przypkowski, replacing an earlier 17th century version. Its dial bears a Latin inscription from the Old Testament, reminding us that our days pass away like a shadow. The Basilica's greatest treasure is the masterpiece of Nuremberg sculptor White Stoss, the St. Mary altarpiece. It took 12 years to complete and was finished in 1489. This is the largest Gothic altarpiece in Europe. A monumental 5-panel structure with 2 movable wings. When fully opened, it depicts the 6 joys of Mary, from the Annunciation to Pentecost. When closed, 12 carved reliefs illustrate the life of Mary and Christ. The altarpiece measures more than 43 feet high and nearly 36 feet wide. At its center is the Dormition and Assumption of the Virgin. Stoss's sculptures are strikingly naturalistic, a full movement, emotion and drama, as a theater had been frozen in wood. The main figures are as tall as 6.5 feet, life-sized in human proportions. All were carved in linden wood, easy to shape, while the background was made of oak. The altarpiece's history was turbulent. During World War II, the Germans seized it and transported it to Nuremberg, intending to create an art museum there. Fortunately, it was recovered after the war and, following conservation, returned to the Basilica in 1957. Today, St. Mary's altarpiece is not only a masterpiece of late Gothic art, but also a symbol of Krakow and Poland. Proof that sacred art can embody faith, artistic genius, and national pride, all at once. A walk through Krakow's main square is not only a meeting with monumental landmarks such as St. Mary's Basilica or the Cloth Hall. It is also a journey along the facades of townhouses, which over the centuries have undergone countless transformations, rebuildings, divisions, and sometimes fires. Today there is no townhouse preserved here in its original Gothic form, yet each one tells its own unique story. Some of these houses are forever tied to the city's history, such as the famous Rynek house, where, according to tradition, in 1364 the wealthy merchant Mikołaj Rynek hosted a legendary feast for monarchs from across Europe. Others stand out with their richly decorated Renaissance facades or Baroque portals, concealing centuries-old walls and mysterious cellars within. Each of them could easily be the subject of a separate walk. For our route today, however, we will end at a very special place, the Krzysztofory Palace, located opposite St. Mary's Basilica. Its name comes from a medieval statue of St. Christopher from 1380, and documents from the late 14th century mention the pharmacy under St. Christopher, run by the apothecary Krzysztof of Ferrara. The pharmacy was still active here as late as 1622. In the mid-17th century, the Gothic houses were transformed into an impressive residence for Adam Kazanowski, court marshal, friend of King Władysław IV, and one of the wealthiest men of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. After his death, the estate passed to Jan Wodzicki, who commissioned the architect Jakub Solari to remodel the palace. From then on, Krzysztofory became the setting for remarkable events. King Jan Kazimierz stayed here twice. King Michał Korybut-Wiśniowiecki spent several days, and in the 18th century, both Tsarevich Paul, the future Tsar of Russia, and King Stanisław August Poniatowski were among its guests. The grand columned portal from the second half of the 17th century, leading into the palace, still makes a striking impression today. Its Gothic cellars, steeped in atmosphere, have for years housed the Krakow Group, an artistic association with avant-garde traditions. In 1965, the palace was handed over to the Historical Museum of the city of Krakow, and ever since it has hosted one of the most important exhibitions dedicated to the city's history and culture. Here, both permanent and temporary exhibitions present Krakow's story in broad perspective. From its medieval beginnings, through the golden age of the royal city, to the turbulent events of the 20th century. The most notable among them is the permanent exhibition Krakow, from the beginning, without end. Today the palace serves not only as a museum, but also as a space for meetings, debates, and artistic events, ensuring that it remains a living part of the cultural life of the main square. Krakow's Main Square is a truly unique place, the largest medieval square in Europe, and at the same time, the living heart of the city. For centuries, it has welcomed merchants and monarchs, pilgrims and artists, and today it continues to draw both locals and visitors from all over the world. Every townhouse, every facade, and every little corner tells its own story, together creating an extraordinary mosaic of history and tradition. Thank you for joining us on this walk, our second journey through Krakow. If you'd like to take part in the next ones and keep uncovering new chapters of this fascinating story, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any of the upcoming routes. See you soon on the Royal Route.